All right, so today we're going to dive deep into something that I know you are really interested in, living longer, A&D, better.
Yeah.
You sent us over some excerpts from Outlive, The Science and Art of Longevity by Peter Attia, and this book really is a game changer. So
It really is.
we're going to try to uncover Attia's core strategies for how to outlive our expected lifespan. But most importantly, I think for us and for you,
Yeah.
is to figure out how you can apply them to your own life.
Exactly. And, I think one of the coolest things about this book is it's just so packed with information. It really changes the way that you think about aging.
Yeah. He throws this kind of wild metaphor out right at the beginning. It's like, imagine this guy on a rooftop
Yeah.
chucking eggs at the street below.
Right. So that guy, that's aging, throwing all sorts of health problems down at us.
Yeah.
And traditional medicine, what Attia calls medicine 2.0, is down there scrambling, trying to catch all these eggs, like treating these diseases as they pop up.
Yeah, it's like we're playing whack-a-mole
Yeah.
with our health.
Exactly. But what if we could stop that guy from throwing the eggs in the first place?
Right.
That is the heart of Attia's Medicine 3.0 approach. Proactive prevention.
Yeah, so instead of waiting for things to go wrong, we're taking charge of our health right now. I mean, this is huge.
It really is a huge shift.
It shifts the power dynamic completely.
Yeah, and I love the way that he kind of frames it because he compares it to, Medicine 2.0 is like waiting until your roof is leaking to call a repairman. Whereas Medicine 3.0 is about, regularly inspecting your roof, making sure those leaks never happen.
Totally. And I think this is where Attia's background really comes into play because, he spent time in finance before becoming a doctor.
Right.
And that gave him a really unique perspective, I think, on risk, which is something that I think traditional medicine doesn't always do so well.
And I think that makes sense because a lot of the time, Medicine 2.0 is focused on immediate harm. So you think about, a patient coming in and they need emergency surgery. Doctors are weighing the immediate risk of that procedure against the potential benefit of saving that patient's life.
Right.
But then the long-term risks of chronic diseases, the ones that develop silently over decades, they often get overlooked. And those are the real killers when it comes to longevity.
Yeah, and this is what's so interesting about Attia's personal story, too, is, he was living what seemed to be a pretty healthy lifestyle. But in his 30s, he discovered that he had a concerning calcium score, which is a measure of plaque buildup in your arteries. And it was just a huge wake-up call for him that, risk can be lurking, even when we think that we are doing everything right.
Absolutely. And it really made him realize that you need to be proactive about assessing your risk factors. Even if you're feeling healthy, don't wait for a heart attack or a cancer diagnosis to start taking action.
Yeah, for sure. So Outlive really focuses on these four major horsemen of aging. These are like the chronic diseases that I think really steal our years and make those years less enjoyable.
So we've got metabolic dysfunction, cardiovascular disease, cancer, and neurodegenerative diseases.
Yeah, those are the big ones.
Those are the big bosses that we're going to be fighting against.
So let's tackle these horsemen one by one, and we can start with metabolic dysfunction. And Attia actually considers this maybe the most critical horseman to address, even more so than obesity.
He does. He calls it the upstream battleground because it really sets the stage for the other three.
Totally. And I love the analogy that he uses to kind of explain metabolic dysfunction. He compares it to like overflowing a bathtub. So imagine like your body's fat storage capacity as that bathtub. And if you keep pouring in more calories than you burn, eventually that tub is going to overflow.
Right.
And that excess fat spills into places where it shouldn't be, like the liver, the muscles, even around the heart, and the pancreas.
And that's where we start to get into trouble because that's what leads to inflammation and insulin resistance, which are the hallmarks of metabolic dysfunction.
And this is what I think is so interesting about it, is it's not just about the number on the scale. You can be metabolically unhealthy, even if you're not overweight.
Absolutely. And Attia actually gives this really interesting example in the book about a patient he had who had a fatty liver but wasn't drinking alcohol.
Oh, wow.
And it turns out he was drinking tons of soda every day. So it's a good reminder that, excess calories, even from those seemingly harmless sources, can really wreak havoc on our metabolic health.
Yeah, I mean, talk about a wake-up call. It makes you kind of rethink those daily habits that you just dismiss as no big deal.
Exactly. Small changes add up to big results over time.
Okay, so next up, we have cardiovascular disease, which is still the #1 killer in many developed countries. And Attia makes this really bold statement.
Yes.
He's like, I believe that heart disease shouldn't even be in the top 10 causes of death if we treated it aggressively enough.
And, it's a very provocative claim,
Yeah.
but it highlights just how much we're not addressing the root causes early enough.
Yeah. So Attia really goes deep into the science of atherosclerosis. And this is where it gets really fascinating. He explains that, it's not just about cholesterol. It's about these things called ApoB particles,
Right.
which are basically these like tiny cargo ships
Right.
that are carrying cholesterol through your bloodstream.
Right. And the more of these ApoB particles you have, the greater your risk of developing plaque in your arteries.
Right.
And this is a key insight.
Right.
Because traditional cholesterol tests don't always tell the whole story.
Right. And that's where advanced testing comes in. Attia talks about a friend of his who discovered he had these dangerously high levels of LPA, which is a specific type of ApoB particle, through a specialized test. And that knowledge potentially saved his life. So it really makes you realize that knowing your individual risk factors is just crucial.
Absolutely. It's about going beyond those basic cholesterol checks and getting a more detailed picture of your cardiovascular health. And then once you have that information, it empowers you to take targeted action.
Right. So how do we combat this horseman? Well, Attia really dives into lifestyle interventions.
Yeah.
And, particularly diet. He really emphasizes reducing saturated fat intake.
Especially for people who are more sensitive to it.
He does. And he's also a big proponent of incorporating more monounsaturated fats, like olive oil, avocados, and nuts, because those can actually have a positive impact on those ApoB levels.
Interesting. And he's also not afraid to advocate for early intervention with medication when necessary, especially statins.
Right. He argues that they're underutilized and that starting them earlier in certain patients could prevent countless heart attacks and save lives.
Okay, so let's tackle cancer, a word that I think strikes fear in everyone's heart. Attia acknowledges that, we still have a long way to go in terms of finding like a cure for cancer.
Yeah, for sure. But he highlights this fascinating connection between cancer and metabolic dysfunction, suggesting that what we eat could actually play a role in both prevention and treatment.
Absolutely.
So he explains this concept called the Warburg effect,
Yeah.
which sounds really complicated. But it's basically how cancer cells fuel their growth differently than normal cells.
Right. So imagine cancer cells as these like sugar-craving monsters constantly needing to feed their rapid growth. And this metabolic quirk is both a hallmark of cancer and a potential vulnerability that we can exploit.
That's incredible.
It is.
So it kind of opens up new avenues for treatment. Attia also believes that immunotherapy, which is where we use our own immune system to fight cancer, holds huge promise for the future.
He does. And he actually shares a really interesting story about a friend of his who was cured of cancer using immunotherapy, but developed type 1 diabetes as a side effect.
Oh, wow.
So it's this powerful reminder that even with incredible advancements, there can be trade-offs. We need to keep pushing for more refined and personalized treatments.
Wow. Absolutely. And that brings us to the final horseman, which is neurodegenerative diseases, and especially Alzheimer's.
Right.
And Attia really emphasizes early detection and prevention for these diseases because effective treatments are still so limited.
They are.
So he dives into the role of genetics,
Yeah.
specifically this APOE gene, which can significantly increase your risk of developing Alzheimer's.
It can. But genes aren't destiny. He also explores lifestyle factors that can really influence brain health, like exercise and sleep.
Right. And one thing that really surprised me was the link that he makes between oral health and Alzheimer's risk. He really emphasizes the importance of flossing, not just for healthy teeth, but potentially for a healthy brain, too.
It is interesting. It makes you think about all these seemingly unconnected health habits and how they might be intertwined.
It does. And it really underscores that our bodies are these complex systems and everything's interconnected. So Attia doesn't just leave us with these four horsemen to battle. He shifts gears to actionable takeaways. And he introduces this really amazing concept called the centenarian decathlon.
Yeah. This is a really cool concept. Think of it as your personalized list of activities that represent your goals for your later decades in life. So what do you want to be doing when you're 80, 90, even 100 years old? Do you want to be hiking with your grandkids, dancing at a wedding, traveling the world?
Yeah, it's such a powerful way to kind of shift your mindset from just exercising to training for life that you love, even as you age.
Absolutely. And realizing that age doesn't have to be a barrier to physical activity.
Right. So Attia is a huge proponent of strength training, especially as we age. And he makes this really strong case that maintaining muscle mass is crucial for staying functional and independent.
It is. And he also emphasizes the importance of zone 2 training, which is a type of aerobic exercise that's particularly beneficial for mitochondrial health. So it's about finding that sweet spot where you're challenging yourself, but not completely wiping yourself out. And he doesn't stop there. He also goes deep into the science of stability training, explaining how it helps us move efficiently and avoid injuries.
Right.
So stability is all about strength, flexibility, and coordination working together so that we can move through life with ease and grace, no matter our age.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so now let's tackle nutrition, which is a topic that it seems like is always shrouded in confusion and conflicting advice. I feel like I'm constantly bombarded with the latest diet fads.
Oh, absolutely.
Attia really cuts through all the noise,
Yeah.
and he presents like a really clear framework for understanding how food impacts our longevity.
He does. He encourages us to move beyond those simplistic labels of like good foods and bad foods, and instead focus on the underlying nutritional biochemistry.
So it's really about understanding how our bodies respond to these different macronutrients, carbohydrates, proteins, fats, and finding a balance that works for us.
Yes.
Exactly. And he's a big proponent of experimentation, using tools like continuous glucose monitoring, CGM, to gather personalized data on your metabolic response to different foods, and then using that information to make informed choices that are aligned with your longevity goals.
Yeah, I love that. It's like he's empowering us to become active participants in our own health.
Absolutely. And he also dives deep into the science of protein, arguing that most people, especially as they age, aren't getting enough high-quality protein. And he emphasizes prioritizing protein sources that are rich in essential amino acids, which are the building blocks of muscle.
Interesting. What about fat? It seems like the advice on fat is always changing.
Right. Well, he talks about the importance of balancing omega-6 fatty acids, which are often found in processed foods, with omega-3 fatty acids, which are found in oily fish, and some plant-based sources.
Okay.
And he also discusses dietary restriction, which includes things like calorie restriction, time-restricted feeding, and intermittent fasting. But he cautions against taking like a dogmatic approach to any particular diet. It's all about finding what works for you and being flexible enough to adjust your approach as needed.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. He emphasizes personalization instead of preaching like a one-size-fits-all solution.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's talk about sleep, something that I know you're really passionate about. Attia shared his own personal aha moment about the importance of sleep for both how long and how well we live.
He does.
I'm a total sleep evangelist.
Yeah.
I'm always preaching the gospel of good sleep. What were some of the insights that Attia shared that really resonated with you?
Well, he goes deep into the science and explains how sleep deprivation can impair our cognitive function, weaken our immune system, and even increase our risk of developing conditions like diabetes, heart disease, and cancer.
Yeah, it's scary to think about how much damage we might be doing by not prioritizing sleep.
And it's really easy to overlook, but he also emphasizes the importance of sleep hygiene, you know, like avoiding caffeine and alcohol before bed, sticking to a consistent sleep schedule, and winding down with relaxing activity.
Right. These are all things that I try to practice myself. What about addressing more specific sleep problems?
Well, he discusses strategies like cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, CBTI, and the potential benefits of medication like trazodone when appropriate. He's a firm believer in the power of sleep to restore and rejuvenate our bodies and minds. He goes as far as to say that sleep is the best medicine for our brains.
I love that. I couldn't agree more. Sleep is really foundational to overall health and well-being.
It is.
Okay, so now let's shift gears a little bit to a topic that's often neglected in conversations about longevity, and that's emotional well-being. Attia bravely shares his personal struggles with mental health and the profound impact that they've had on his life.
Yeah.
And it's so refreshing to hear someone speak so openly and honestly about these issues. It really helps to break down the stigma.
Absolutely. And he really emphasizes the importance of cultivating self-awareness, developing coping mechanisms for stress and anxiety, and seeking professional help when needed. He's a strong advocate for therapy.
Yeah, what kinds of therapy does he recommend?
Well, he highlights various modalities that could be helpful, such as cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, dialectical behavior therapy, DBT, and even psychedelic-assisted therapy in certain cases.
Wow, that's really interesting. It shows how much the field of mental health is of all
It
that.
is, and he also discusses the power of mindfulness, meditation,
Right.
and other practices that can help us regulate our emotions and cultivate a sense of inner peace.
Yeah, I've found that incorporating mindfulness
Yeah.
into my daily routine has made a huge difference in managing my stress.
It's a powerful tool, and Attia argues that emotional health isn't just about feeling good, it's about being resilient in the face of challenges and having the tools to navigate life's inevitable ups and downs.
That really resonates with me.
Yeah.
Life is full of challenges. I
Yeah.
think it's how we respond to those
Yeah.
challenges that really determines our
Yeah.
well-being.
Absolutely. And that brings us to another key point. Attia learned the hard way that longevity is meaningless if your life and relationships are lacking. He really emphasizes the importance of nurturing our relationships, finding purpose and meaning in our lives, and cultivating gratitude.
Yeah, these are often seen as like soft skills. But Attia makes a really compelling case that they're actually essential ingredients for a long and fulfilling life.
He does. He argues that they're not just feel-good concepts, but crucial elements that contribute to our overall health and well-being.
Totally.
And, he also encourages us to embrace a growth mindset, to see aging not as a decline, but as an opportunity for continued learning, growth, and evolution.
I love that. It's so empowering.
Yeah.
So this has been incredible so far. We've covered so much ground, but there's still more to explore. So we'll be back after a quick break.
To dive even deeper into Outlive and discuss how to apply these concepts to create your own personalized roadmap for longevity. Stay tuned.
Welcome back. As we were going through those first few chapters, one thing that really struck me was how much Attia emphasizes personalizing your approach to longevity. He really drives home the point that there's no one-size-fits-all solution. Yeah, he uses this really funny analogy of like those old cars where they used to weigh down the gas pedal with a brick. So you can imagine how clunky and inefficient that would be.
Right. It's a perfect illustration of how we've been approaching health and longevity for so long. It's this really crude, imprecise way.
Yeah, like we're all expected to drive the same car, even though our bodies and our genetics and our goals are all so different.
Exactly. Attia argues that we need to move beyond this generic advice and embrace a more nuanced, individualized approach, one that considers our unique circumstances.
Yeah, and I think thankfully, advances in technology are making this personalization possible. Things like continuous glucose monitoring or CGM allow us to gather data and make more informed decisions about our health.
Yeah.
It's like finally trading in that old clunker for a car with a finely tuned engine.
That's a great analogy. It's all about understanding how your body responds to specific inputs, food, exercise, sleep, and then tailoring your approach accordingly.
Yeah. Attia even compares optimizing our health to training for a sport or mastering a skill. It takes dedication, experimentation, and a willingness to adjust your strategy along the way.
It does.
So let's talk exercise.
Yeah.
Outlive really digs into the different types of exercise and their impact on longevity. Attia shares his own journey as an athlete, moving from a focus solely on endurance training to a more balanced approach. That includes strength, stability, and Zone 2 training.
He does. And he stresses that you really need to tailor your exercise plan to your individual goals and physical abilities. And this is where he introduces that concept that we touched on earlier, the centenarian decathlon.
Yeah. I'm ready to hear more about this.
All right, so think of it as your personalized list of activities that represent your goals for later in life. So what do you want to be able to do when you're 80, 90, even 100 years old? Do you want to be hiking with your grandkids? Dancing at a wedding? Traveling the world?
It's such a powerful way to shift your mindset from just exercising to training for a life that you love, even as you age.
Absolutely. It's about realizing that age doesn't have to be a barrier to physical activity. You can challenge yourself and push your limits throughout your life.
Yeah, it's so inspiring. So Eddie is a huge proponent of strength training, especially as we age. And he makes this really strong case that maintaining muscle mass is crucial for staying functional and independent.
It is.
He also emphasizes the importance of Zone 2 training, which is a type of aerobic exercise that's particularly beneficial for mitochondrial health.
Right. It's about finding that sweet spot where you're challenging yourself, but not completely wiping yourself out.
Yeah.
And he doesn't stop there. He also goes deep into the science of stability training, explaining how it helps us move efficiently and avoid injuries.
So stability is all about strength, flexibility, and coordination, working together so that we can move through life with ease and grace, no matter our age.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's tackle nutrition, which is a topic that always seems to be shrouded in confusion and conflicting advice. I feel like I'm constantly bombarded with the latest diet fads.
I know, me too.
Attia really cuts through all the noise, though,
Yeah.
and presents a really clear framework for understanding how food impacts our longevity.
Yeah.
So he encourages us to move beyond those simplistic labels of good foods and bad foods.
Yeah.
Instead, focus on the underlying nutritional biochemistry.
Exactly.
So it's about understanding
Right.
how our bodies respond to these different macronutrients.
Yeah.
Carbohydrates,
Yeah.
proteins, fats, and finding a balance that works for us.
Yeah, and he's a big proponent of experimentation, using tools like CGM to gather that personalized data on your metabolic response to different foods. And then you can use that information to make informed choices that are aligned with your longevity goals.
Yeah, I love how he empowers us to become
Yeah.
active participants in our own health.
It's really cool. And he also dives deep into the science of protein, arguing that most people, especially as they age, aren't getting enough high-quality protein.
Interesting.
And he emphasizes prioritizing protein sources that are rich in essential amino acids.
Yeah.
Or building blocks of muscle.
Okay. What about fat? It seems like the advice on fat is always changing.
It does seem like it. Well, he talks about the importance of balancing omega-6 fatty acids, which are often found in processed foods, with omega-3 fatty acids, which are found in oily fish, and some plant-based sources.
Okay.
And he also discusses dietary restriction, which includes things like calorie restriction, time-restricted feeding, and intermittent fasting. But he cautions against taking like a dogmatic approach to any particular diet.
Right.
It's all about finding what works for you and being flexible enough to adjust your approach as needed.
I appreciate that he emphasizes that personalization.
Yeah.
Instead of pushing
Yeah.
a one-size-fits-all solution.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about sleep, something that I know you are very passionate about.
Oh, I am.
Attia shares his own personal aha moment about the importance of sleep for both how long and how well we live.
Yeah, she does.
I'm a total sleep evangelist, always preaching the gospel of good sleep. What were some of the insights that he shared that resonated with you?
Well, he really goes deep into the science of it all and explains how sleep deprivation can impair our cognitive function, weaken our immune system, and even increase our risk of developing conditions like diabetes, heart disease, and cancer.
It is scary to think about how much damage we might be doing by not prioritizing sleep.
It is, and it's easy to overlook. But he also emphasizes the importance of sleep hygiene. Avoiding caffeine and alcohol before bed, sticking to a consistent sleep schedule, and winding down with relaxing activities.
Yeah, these are all things that I try to practice myself. What about addressing more specific sleep problems?
He discusses strategies like cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, CBTI, and the potential benefits of medication like trazodone when appropriate.
Okay, interesting.
He's a firm believer in the power of sleep to restore and rejuvenate our bodies and minds. He even goes so far to say that sleep is the best medicine for our brains.
I love that. I couldn't agree more. Sleep is truly foundational to overall health and well-being.
It really is.
Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit to a topic that is often neglected in these conversations about longevity, and that is emotional well-being. Attia bravely shares his own struggles with mental health and the profound impact that it has had on his life.
He does.
It's so refreshing to hear someone speak so openly and honestly about these issues. I think it really helps to break down the stigma.
It does. And he emphasizes the importance of cultivating self-awareness, developing coping mechanisms for stress and anxiety, and seeking professional help when needed. He's a strong advocate for therapy.
Yeah, what kinds of therapy does he recommend?
He highlights a variety of modalities that can be helpful, such as cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, dialectical behavior therapy, DBT, and even psychedelic-assisted therapy in certain cases.
Wow, that's interesting. It really shows how much the field of mental health is evolving.
It really is. And he also discusses the power of mindfulness, meditation, and other practices that can help us regulate our emotions and cultivate a sense of inner peace.
Yeah, I found that incorporating mindfulness into my daily routine has made a huge difference for me in managing stress.
It's a powerful tool. And Attia argues that emotional health isn't just about feeling good. It's about being resilient in the face of challenges and having the tools to navigate. Life's inevitable, ups and downs.
Yeah, that really resonates with me because life is full of challenges, and I think it's how we respond to those challenges that really determines our well-being.
Absolutely. And that brings us to another key point. Attia learned the hard way that longevity is meaningless if your life and relationships are lacking.
Right.
He really emphasized the importance of nurturing our relationships, finding purpose and meaning in our lives, and cultivating gratitude.
Yeah, these are often seen as like soft skills.
Yeah.
But Attia makes a really compelling case that they're essential ingredients for a long and fulfilling life.
He does. He argues that they're not just feel-good concepts, but crucial elements that contribute to our overall health and well-being.
Yeah. He also encourages us to embrace a growth mindset, to see aging not as a decline, but as an opportunity for continued learning, growth, and evolution.
Yeah.
I love that. It's so empowering.
It is.
This deep dive has been packed with so much valuable information. I'm already feeling inspired to make some changes in my own life.
Me too.
But we're not done yet. We'll be back after a short break to share our final takeaways from Outlive and answer that all-important question: what does it really mean to live a longer, healthier, and happier life? Stay with us. Okay, so we're back, and this book has really got me thinking about my own longevity game plan. It's so much more than just taking a bunch of supplements. We're trying to, biohack our way to a longer life.
Right. It really is about a complete mindset shift. Attia encourages us to see longevity as this lifelong pursuit, this continuous process of optimizing our health and well-being.
Yeah, I really love how he talks about building resilience into our lives. It's not just about like avoiding every possible risk, but developing the ability to bounce back from setbacks and adapt to change.
That's so important. We can't control everything that happens to us, but we can control how we respond. And that ability to adapt and recover is essential for navigating those challenges that inevitably come with aging.
And one thing that really struck a chord with me was Attia's emphasis on personal responsibility. He's not saying we should all become doctors or scientists, but he does encourage us to become informed advocates for our own health.
He does.
He challenges us to question conventional wisdom, to seek out credible sources of information, and be willing to experiment to find what works best for us as individuals.
It's about taking ownership of your health journey and not just blindly following the latest trends or relying solely on the advice of healthcare professionals.
Right. It's really about empowering ourselves to make informed decisions and become active participants in our own well-being.
Absolutely.
And Attia also highlights the importance of community and connection. He talks about how our social networks, our sense of purpose, and our relationships all play this really vital role in longevity.
Yeah, he cites studies showing that people who have strong social connections tend to live longer and healthier lives.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
Having a supportive community can buffer us from stress and provide a sense of belonging and purpose.
Exactly.
He also talks about the importance of finding meaning and purpose in our lives. Something that gives us a sense of direction and motivation, even as we age.
He does. And he even goes as far as to say that love, both romantic and platonic, is a key ingredient for longevity. It's about nurturing those connections that bring joy and fulfillment to our lives.
Okay, so as we wrap up our deep dive into Outlive, let's come back to that key question. What does it really mean to live a longer, healthier, and happier life? What are the big takeaways that we can apply to our own lives?
Well, I think Attia gives us a really compelling answer. It's not just about adding years to our lives. It's about adding life to our years. It's about savoring experiences, cherishing relationships, and pursuing our passions with vigor and enthusiasm. It's about embracing this holistic approach to health and well-being.
Yeah.
One that encompasses our physical,
mental,
emotional, and social self.
It's really recognizing that all of these aspects are interconnected and contribute to our overall vitality.
Absolutely.
It's about prioritizing the things that truly matter, our relationships, our passions, our purpose, and creating a life that's rich with meaning and joy.
And it's about recognizing that aging is not a decline, but a journey of continuous growth and evolution.
Yeah, I love that perspective.
Me too.
Outlive is such a powerful reminder that we have more control over our health and longevity than we often realize.
We do.
It's really an invitation to embrace the science of aging and use that knowledge to craft a life that's both long and fulfilling.
Couldn't agree more.
So there you have it, our deep dive into Outlive, The Science and Art of Longevity by Peter Attia. It's a book brimming with insights and actionable advice, and we highly recommend checking it out for yourself. We hope this deep dive has given you a fresh perspective on aging and inspired you to take some steps to optimize your own longevity. Remember, it's never too late to start. Thanks for joining us. And until next time, keep diving deep.